Interacting with objects, part 4. Liquid. In this video, we're going to be basically splitting it up into two parts. The first part is going to show you how to make something a liquid and how we can kind of like make that liquid interact with things, that type of stuff. And the second part, we're actually going to put it into a scenario where we're going to maybe pour liquid out of a container and make it kind of look like syrup, that type of stuff in terms of the flow of the liquid. But anyway, the first part, we're just going to do general. We're going to keep our cube because we're actually going to have a liquid falling down onto our cube. So I've got the cube over there on the right hand side with the camera and the light. I'm also in object mode now. I'm going to add a UV sphere, and this is what our liquid will be pouring from. Or it will be pouring as this shape then. Now it doesn't matter what shape you use, but that was just the first one I grabbed. So as you notice, this also says sphere over on the right hand side. Now then, to make this liquid, which will pour down onto our cube, I just need to make sure that I've got the sphere selected. I go up to Object, and on Quick Effects, I just press Quick Liquid. And I've just realised it's Quick Explode and Quick Smoke, which I'm going to have a little play around with at some stage too as well. Now then, you'll notice that in terms of the viewports, we were originally on this viewport here, but now we've actually done a quick effect and added the liquid to our sphere. We get this liquid domer appearing, and we kind of get this cuboid, which kind of stops us from seeing anything. And we were chucked into the wireframe viewport, because inside this liquid domer is where our liquid interaction is going to happen. And if I just move this around, you can see that within this orange kind of cuboid which has been made, the liquid is kind of bouncing around. So I'm going to need to make this orange liquid domer bigger. So it actually, so it basically includes our cube at some point. And I'm just going to pause that and drag it up because we're probably going to see that a little bit more after. Anyway, now on the liquid domer, I'm going to click on scale. I'll grab the little blue one there and pull it out. And from the X angle, is that the right way of putting it? The X axis, I'm also going to drag it down so it will then be on the bottom there. Now, if I click back on that viewport, so the shading, we can't actually see anything inside her anymore. So it's going to be best to continue working on the wireframe. Now, at the moment, liquid, when it fell, was kind of limited to what the size of this sphere is, if that makes sense. And there is something we can do. And if we actually click on the sphere and we go down to physics, you'll notice the fluid has already been added to it and it's got this geometry. Now, we're going to look at an inflow a little bit later, which will basically make it run like a tap. So at this stage, I'm not going to change anything on this. I am going to click on the liquid domer. And you can see there's already a fluid added to this. Resolution, we're going to be up in a little bit later on, but we're going to keep it at 32 at this stage. And as I scroll down, we will be looking at viscosity. That's the thickness of the liquid. We need to take the mesh, and we'll do the viscosity thing a little bit later. Now, sometimes when you click on mesh, something happens here, hasn't in this case. But don't panic because that's perfectly fine. And if I scroll down a little bit further to where the cache memory is, I'm going to click on replay, click on all, and then I'm going to press bake all. Now, in one of our older videos, I think it was like soft bodies, we had to bake things because it got really laggy when we were trying to play it on screen. Now, you'll notice when the baking is finished, it then says pre-all. And with liquid, sorry, you will have to do quite a bit of baking because it's so kind of detailed and so many calculations have to be kind of carried out in order for Blender to work out these things. So it's always best to kind of bake them before you press play. And if we just rewind it back and press play, for it to actually work out where all these things are going. And you can see the frames per second are 20 odd. But if you didn't bake it wouldn't even get past 1 in my case. But that's the machine I'm using. Now, one of the issues is we're in wireframe. So let's go back onto this viewport so we can actually see it now. That's great. The liquid looks a little bit N64 type of detail. And it's not actually interacting with our cube at all. And the reason being, and we're going to fix that in a moment, I just want to have a look a little. Well, it doesn't actually get right to the flow either. Now, a couple of things to fix then. On our sphere itself, our sphere, that's not a sphere, is it? It's a cube. We're going to click on fluid because this didn't have anything set on it. We just did it on the sphere, remember? And on the type, we're just going to make it set as effector. So if you had any shapes on here and you wanted the liquid to interact with them, you have to set it to effector like we've just done here on the physics tab, fluid effector. We might have to look at something here a little bit later, but for the time being, that's fine. Now, one of the big drawbacks with liquid is You can't actually get liquid to move things because I really wanted this kind of effect of almost like water running down a hill and knocking something over. But it doesn't do that in Blender, unfortunately. You have to kind of do that as a separate thing yourself, like we did in one of the earlier tutorials. So we set that as the effector. We will need to come back onto the liquid doma, which you can see now all this stuff is highlighted and selected. And you'll notice I said about resolution, I want to put that up to 100, but it's locked. So when I scroll down where we did have the bake all button, we have a free all button, and it goes back to that point of we can't actually see anything unless we're in the wireframe. So if I scroll back up to where the resolution is, and I put it as 100, and then we scroll back down and we do bake all. And basically, this is what you have to do every time you make an adjustment to Liquid Doma. But you'll notice this time, but it is a lot slower in going along. So what I'm going to do at this stage, I'm going to pause this, and when it kind of finishes, I'll start recording again to show you what that has done. Right, so that took about 2 or 3 minutes. Now, the more kind of like detailed you do things with liquid, and we'll kind of be talking as we go along, this process will take longer and longer. So if you need to go and like wash the dishes, do a bit of shopping or whatever, then set this running and come back and hopefully it's done. Now, again, it does depend on the machine you're using. So my laptop's probably not as quick as some of the machines you might be using, so you might not have the issues I'm having. But anyway, let's go back onto the shading viewport. And if we just turn this round and wind it back and press play, you'll see now that it's a lot more detailed liquid. It is actually interacting with the cube and it is actually hitting the perimeter of the dome we set. So maybe I might have to make that bigger so it just keeps flowing and flowing and flowing. Now, the one thing I did want to point out as well before we finish the first part of this, because like I said, there is a second part where we're going to be making a container and having liquid pouring out of it. I actually want us to show you what it looks like, because this is set as geometry at the moment on the particles geometry here. This is the sphere I've got selected. But if you change geometry to inflow, that basically makes it run as a continuous tap then, or like a river, which never kind of ends running. So, well, it will eventually when you get up to the end of the animation, depends on frames you use it. So again, I'm just going to go back onto our liquid doma, and I'm going to have to do the free all process and bake all process, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes' time. So this is what it looks like when it's continuously running. So if I rewind it back and press play, and remember the resolution is on 100, and the idea is it will continuously run and run and run until this liquid doma is filled. Never actually got to the point of filling a liquid doma though. But obviously when it gets to frame 250, it will come back to frame number 1. Now, one thing I do want to point out on this before we go any further, this is what it looks like on the shading viewport, I think it is. Now, on this viewport, where it's like a world scene, so basically showing you what that liquid will look like with a reflection of a world environment, then that's what it looks like. So it's kind of cool. But when you come to the render view, so if we actually did render this as it is, this is what it will look like because we haven't added any colors, any materials, which is something we can talk about as and when we go along. So just to make you aware of that. Now, anyway, part 1 is completed. Part 2 is just about to begin. Part 2, so we're opening up a new file in Blender. We're going to General and we're going to set this cube as a container. So basically it will hold some liquid for us. So I'm going to go to the edit mode. I'm going to click on faces and I'm going to select the top face of the cube. And if I come down to extrude region, and then pull it up. It doesn't matter how far I pull it up. And in fact, I'm going to click on this and put it back down to where it originally was by typing in 0. And you might be thinking, what was the point of that? But the reason I did that is because when I got to scale and grab the blue section, then it allows me to do this. Now, if I didn't do the extrusion thing, it wouldn't actually work that way. And what I'm also going to do then, that bit which I've taken in a bit, I'm going to go back to extrusion, click on the X so I can see it from the side, click on the wireframe, and I'm just going to drag it down so it looks like an empty cup, or empty container, like so. Okay, so if I go back onto the object mode, you can see there's my container. Now, I need to add liquid to my container. So in object mode, I'm going to add another cube, which will kind of go exactly over the top of the other cube. You can see I got cube and cube 001. And from the Z axis, looking straight down on them, I'm going to scale it so it is actually within the dimensions of the oh, I don't know what it is, the container. Then let me just zoom in a bit better so you can see it that way. And from the side, I'm also gonna go, let's click on the wireframe to do this. Make sure that it is within our kind of area we've got cut out then. So if I go back onto the viewport so we can see it, our liquid is in there, but I've got to set it as a liquid, haven't I? So just as we did in the first part of this video, if I go to Object, Quick Effects, and click on Quick Liquid, it will do the Doma thing for us. I've just zoomed out so I can see it a little bit better. I'm going to resize the Doma, so I'm on the scale already set for it. Make it a little bit wider, and in fact I want to make it a lot taller because this is going to spill the liquid out. Then I'm going to get it to twist and do that for us. Now, I also need to make sure then on Liquid Dome, if I come to Physics, excuse me, resolution, we're going to put up straight away to 100. We're going to scroll down and we're going to go to Mesh. And like I said to you before, sometimes when you click Mesh, it does this for you, but don't worry if it doesn't. And in the cache area, type we're changing to all. Now, we're not going to bake it just yet because I've just realized the actual cube itself, our container, I haven't set as a effector. So I've just done that, so it's ready to go. Now, the other thing I want to do as well, on frame number 20, so I've got my cube selected, so that's where our container is then. I'm actually going to get it to kind of rotate. So if I click the record button, go up to rotate, and then just start to rotate this slightly. And in fact, I'm going to put it back to 0. So on frame number 20, we'll start at this particular position. In fact, it will be there from frame 0 up until frame 20. And on frame 60, then, we're going to rotate them so the liquid will fall out. And I'm just going to press unrecord. So there's our keyframes, look. So if I just kind of click through these, it's kind of, and we're looking at this, nothing is happening to him, but then it's going to start rotating up until frame 60 and stop in that position. So in theory, what should happen is now then when I bake this, our liquid will pour out of the container, but there might be a couple of issues. But anyway, let's click on the liquid doma. Let's scroll down to the cache area, and we've already clicked on all. We've already done mesh up a bit further up, and we're going to press bake all. And we'll see how that long takes. That's not too bad, actually, but just for the time being, I'm going to press pause. So let's see what happens. If I go back onto that particular viewport and I want to rotate it around, you can see it's pouring out. But I just want to kind of see how it's pouring out, if that makes sense. So let's rewind it back onto frame 0 or frame 1. Press play, and the liquid pours out. But it seems like some of the liquid is actually coming out of the bottom of, or whatever that part is, of the container. Now, I did mention earlier, on the effectors, we might have to do something with the surface. So this is the cube, it's got the effector set on a liquid, and what we're actually going to do is set that there to 0.3. And what that does then, it makes sure that nothing falls out of it by accident. Well, hopefully that's what it does anyway. So let's click back on the liquid doma, let's click on free all, and we're going to bake that. And it shouldn't take too long, but I'll see you in about a minute's time. So let's see if that's done the trick. So if we press play at this point, nothing. Well, it might be a couple of little bits, but I can always adjust that if I need to on the effector itself. I can always make that a little bit higher, but that seems to work okay for me. So it's pouring out as if it's like paint really out of a tin. Now, I did mention earlier, but I actually want this to kind of trickle out like syrup would, so it's like a thicker substance. So on the liquid dome, which I've got selected, I will need to go and free it all again, and it'll kind of kick off there. Let me just press pause there, because that's going to annoy me otherwise. A little bit further up above mesh, I mentioned viscosity. Now, viscosity, when you actually click on the strength, there's only one option for it. 0.05, it will fall out as if it is almost like a solid then. Now, even if it was set as 0, that liquid we just saw pouring out of the container will have some type of thickness to it. But a little bit of trial and error, I've been messing around, and 0.008 seems to make it kind of trickle out like syrup then. So again, if I scroll down and I do bake all, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes again. I keep saying that, don't I? I don't mean to. Welcome back. I just realized I always start with, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. So let's rewind it back, let's press play, and remember viscosity is set as 0.008. And now look, it's kind of running out a bit more sludgy, a bit more blotchy. So yeah, that does the job. Now then, I'm wondering, how can I do this in my animation? Ta-da!